Hello YouTube, Jecinda here. In this video, I'm going to be talking about sexual desire and how our bodies are socially and culturally constructed to have and participate in proper sexual desire. I'll also talk about the social hierarchy within sexual desire and how value is prescribed to bodies that are believed to have proper sexual desire versus bodies who are deemed as having deviant or improper sexual desires that differ from the cultural norm. Let's begin first by talking about sexual desire and what our society considers to be proper sexual desire. Gil Rubin wrote an extensive article called Thinking Sex, Notes for a Radical Theory of the Political Sexuality. In this article, Rubin talks about the inner workings and politicalization of sexual desire. Here, the author explains how sexual desire is a tool in the overall social hierarchy within society. Or, in other words, is a working part in the overall social system. Last video, I talked about how gender is constructed, and it's also used to create a social strata where certain bodies that are properly gendered, bodies that have proper sexual desires, are given more power, more prestige, and even more wealth over bodies that deviate from the norm. Well, sexual desire is another socially constructed descriptor in which our culture prescribes to individuals for the purpose of ranking them and dictating value among bodies. First, I want to talk about a little bit about how and why sexual desire is socially constructed, as well as define what I mean when I refer to proper or improper sexual desire, because you'd think that such a personal, intimate topic would be just that, right? It would be personal and intimate and vary among individuals. Well, you would be wrong. Who and what we are allowed to love, or who and what we are allowed to desire, is often prescribed to us at birth, and it's heavily dependent on the cultural beliefs held by society that we live in. The notion of proper sexual desire is deeply embedded in the framework of our society. And Rubin explains that the definitions of proper sexual desire correspond with the political agenda of the nation and is influenced by the time and history as well as the stressors that the nation is facing at that particular time. So, for example, prior to the 1950s, prostitution and masturbation were at the forefront of society's sexual anxiety. However, during the 1950s, the focal point shifted to what Rubin refers to as the image of the homosexual menace. Rubin also explains how the term sex offender became an object of fear, where sex and the acts of sex and sexual desire could be personified, and a good and bad polarization was established. Think about that for a second. Long ago, society decided homosexuality was unacceptable. And at first, sex offender was used to define a rapist or a child molester. But after a while, and with the help of the legal system, lines began to blur, and sex offender became synonymous with homosexuals, code word for homosexuals. This made it easy for society to delineate between who was good and who our children needed to be protected from. So, laws against sodomy blurred the lines between violent sexual acts and consensual acts of sodomy. So, this made it outright illegal for individuals to enjoy a particular sex act. It was illegal for them to have those desires. It made it illegal. So laws against sodomy and attitudes towards homosexuality in general are one of the easiest improper sexual desires. Examples, one of the most easiest examples. So then, how does our society, how does our culture define what is proper? What does proper sexual desire look like, right? Because we talked about what is an easy example of improper, but what does proper sexual desire look like? Well, it's based on heteronormative ideology. There's that word again, right? We talked about that in the first video. It is traditionally heterosexual desire, or a sexual act between a man and a woman. That is what is deemed proper in our society, who have to be old enough, because the law stipulates that, to consent in sex acts with each other. And it should be for love. But this is even a more progressive approach, right? That a proper sex is for love. That's easier to delineate between loose people who have sex too loosely. And it should ideally be done within marriage and with the ultimate aim of producing offspring. So anything outside of this, and not just homosexuals, but individuals who have fetishes, who like bondage, who like to have sexual intercourse in public, anyone who deviates from the norm is then deemed to have improper desires. That's what becomes improper. So, can you see how the social hierarchy that is constructed is unfairly biased towards bodies who fit neatly into the gender and sexual desire dichotomy? They fit neatly there. And how bodies that are born differently can be marginalized and made to feel that they don't have a place in society. So I challenge you. Question your mores. Question your values. And even your personal preferences. Are they there because they're yours? Or is it possible that you're carrying around someone else's, 65-year-old beliefs? Who would you be if our culture and society hadn't been doing everything in its power to fit you neatly into a mold? Who would we be as a people? How much more inclusive could we look? How much more forgiving could we be towards people that are different from you, that are different physically, able-bodied versus disabled-bodied, people who like bondage versus people who like, heterosexuals? Just what would it look like? Is it something that you can even fathom? That's how deep-rooted these social constructs go. And it's not just you, it's all of us. We're under these pressures, but it's something to think about. And it's important because when you hear things in the news about transgenders, or that, that's at the tip top of all the news headlines. If you can't really wrap your mind around it, it's not something that's bad-like. It's more something that has been pushed under the rug for political reasons, to make sure that there's a delineation between us and them, good and bad. So I give you that food for thought. Hope you guys have a great evening, and I will see you all next time. Bye.